a little bit about yourself. Perfect. Yeah, so please use the chat, use the Q&A as well throughout the webinar. We want to keep it as focused and minimize disruption throughout the webinar. So use the Q&A to pop in your questions that will be answered at the end. And use the chat to engage with us. Give us a follow on Instagram. We will be putting some links as well for the upcoming webinars, for everything we have coming up. So engage with us in the chat, and we're gonna start again. I'm gonna give it another 20 seconds. We have 16 participants, which is great. So come on in. Thank you for joining us. My name is Karine Bado. I haven't even introduced myself. I'm the venture coach here at the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship. And I usually host or co-host a webinar. And today we have Cordell Jacks, the founder of a great program. I'm not going to share much, but stay tuned. There's something great happening here in Canada, and you get to have the prime of the information. So we're going to jump right into the webinar shortly. Give us a follow on social media. We have an Instagram page. We have a Twitter, LinkedIn. You can also find Cordell Jacks' LinkedIn profile as well, just typing his name and give him a follow. But if you want to know what's happening, if you want to keep up to date with the center, this is where the information is usually spread. And just a quick rules for the webinar. Please remain muted throughout the webinar. We just want to make sure that we keep everything focused. You can keep your camera on if you feel comfortable, or you can turn it off. It's up to you, but you have to remain on mute throughout the webinar. Use the Q&A section at the bottom to ask your question. You don't have to wait till the end. We really want to get your question asked throughout the webinar so that they get answered at the end. So anything you have in mind, feel free to jump into the Q&A. And the webinar is also recorded. It will be posted on the website. In case you want to go back and check everything that was shared today, you have that option. Give us a follow, as well as our special guest. Give us a follow on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. This is where the information are usually updated. So take a moment to do that. Another great way to keep up with what's happening in the entrepreneurship sphere is to come to the webinars, because we make sure to bring experts to tell you what's happening in this fair, what are the opportunities. And the next one that we are having on November 23rd is no different. We have a special guest in the house. She is from the Economic Development Winnipeg. Amanda McDonald will be here. And it's everything about marketing. I know marketing is something that can be challenging for many entrepreneurs or for people who are looking to launch a business. So you don't want to miss that one. Make sure you register, make sure you tell a friend, you share it around with your network, and spread the news that someone is coming to provide some great point on how to find your sweet spot for your target market. With no further ado, I'm gonna jump right in and introduce our guest. Cordell Jacks is an alumnus from the University of Manitoba. He is bringing a very great opportunity here in Canada, and I'll let you, Cordell, take over and share your presentation with us.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction, and thank you to the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship, to Deborah and her team. Corinne, thank you for all of this setup, and thank you to all of you for being here this morning. I really appreciate you taking the time and your interest in this subject. As Corinne mentioned, I'm an Asper alumni, graduated in 2003. I was the president of the Commerce Students Association, and I took part in the business planning program at what was then the Asper Center for Entrepreneurship. So I'm a big fan and of the lineage of entrepreneurs coming out of this program. Just quickly about myself, I'm coming to you today from my home in Vancouver Island. I live near Campbell River. And in my career, I've spent my career in social finance, in international development work. When I came back to Canada, I moved into clean tech, ocean plastics, sustainable agriculture. And then interestingly enough, as I moved to Vancouver Island to have my family here, the gentleman that recruited me out of the Asper School of Business, my now business partner, Mike Miller, happened to live 10 minutes up the road from me. And about a year and a half ago, he had sold one of his companies and came to me asking if I could help him develop his social impact thesis. And we came upon this idea that we're going to talk about today, which is known as ETA, Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition, and search funds. And so without further ado, I'm going to dive right into my presentation this morning. So I'm representing the organization that we've launched, the Canada ETA Accelerator. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Today we're gonna spend about 35-40 minutes talking about entrepreneurship through acquisition, or ETA as it's known, and related investment vehicle known as search funds. I'm going to give you an overview of this space, and just below here is our website and my email address. I'll put this up at the end of the presentation for further questions after we get in. So let's dive in. What is ETA? Really, entrepreneurship through acquisition is the path to becoming an entrepreneur by buying an established small business. It's really different than the usual fetishization that we have around new venture launches. You know, we put a lot of effort, energy into becoming the next new idea. Well, for a lot of entrepreneurs, they know they want to run and lead a business. They may not have the next idea. And so looking at acquiring an existing business, one with a history of growth, and that might be resilient to some, early operator or new leadership mistakes, is a really attractive opportunity. And it allows an early stage entrepreneur to become CEO with a significant equity stake in any business they buy, without prior top management experience. And it's really important because, for those of us that really want to build something and reap the benefits of our risk, our energy, our perseverance, this model really aligns that. And ETA, Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition, sits at the intersection of entrepreneurship and investing. Entrepreneurship in that it's a new operator running a business, and investing in looking at leveraged buyout. Essentially, how do we acquire an already existing business? And that's where we come to the idea of search funds, which I'll speak about in a second. I just want to say that ETA, although acquisitions of businesses have been done for a long time, the idea of ETA and search funds really started around 1984. This was at Harvard. A guy named Irv Grousbeck really started popularizing this idea of young entrepreneurs buying new businesses, and it was really it has really grown, as you'll see over the years, mostly in the US at Ivy League business schools, and most recently internationally. So, search funds. This is essentially an investment vehicle whereby an entrepreneur can raise capital to acquire the business that they plan on operating. It's really at the intersection of venture capital. So venture capital being investment into a young early stage operator who's going to acquire and run the business, and private equity investing, really where we look at leverage buyouts, how to buy existing companies and add value to them. This requires, search funds are really about accessing capital for the purchase of the business, as well as for the search phase in looking for and acquiring a business. And it's really about partnership, bringing experienced investors and advisors to support young and experienced operators to acquire and run these businesses. And ultimately, this is about developing a career path. It's not a job. You're not looking for a business to buy your role somewhere. You're looking at buying a business to ultimately develop this business and create a flourishing leadership career out of it. All right, so I apologize in advance for how quickly I'm going to move through this process. I'm going to leave some resources at the end, but I really want to give you a high-level overview of what the ETA and search process looks like. So strap yourselves in here, and we're going to move quickly through this process. Search funds really have 4 different phases. the initial raising of capital to go and look for a company, then the search for a company. That can usually take upwards of 2 years. The average has been about 18 or 19 months in the last couple of years to decide to search for a business and then go find a business and acquire it. Then there's stage 3, which is usually an operation and value creation stage. This can be 4 to 7 years and beyond. And this is really where you learn the business, you grow the business, and ultimately you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is considered exit, but it doesn't always necessarily mean an exit from a company. And we'll talk about what that looks like in the longer term of running a business that you've acquired. What I want to get across here is that this is a big journey. It's a 10-year commitment, upwards of 2 years in looking to buy a business, a minimum of 4 to 7 years of running that business, and oftentimes a lot longer. So this is a big, long journey to embark on. And for most people, it's the biggest decision they've made in their life, aside from maybe marriage. Following a search and ETA career path it's an adventure. And so with that, resilience is required. This is not an adventure for everyone, just like entrepreneurship of new ventures is not for everyone. This has really high highs and really low lows. And so resilience is required for this. But again, as I said, it really aligns your incentives. The amount of energy you want to put into a business, you're going to reap the rewards of that with meaningful equity. And finally, as it relates to what I'm going to share about what we've created through the Canadian Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Accelerator, we're looking for not just leaders and entrepreneurial leaders, but we're looking for social entrepreneurs and impact leaders. And we'll speak to that later in the presentation. So let's go through each of these stages of the search fund lifecycle. The first stage is raising capital, finding enough money and investors usually to get you to cover your expenses in the search for a business to buy. In doing this, you essentially want to determine what your investment thesis is. What kind of company are you looking to buy? What are your criteria for the types of businesses that you might look to purchase? Like I said, you raise the capital to cover this upwards of 2-year search process. You end up spending that capital on your own salary, your own living expenses. Usually there are interns who are helping you look and search for different companies that might be willing to sell to you. You're paying for intermediaries. These are service providers such as lawyers, accountants, insurance that help you do the due diligence on the companies you're looking to acquire. This can be CRM systems, outreach and travel to meet business owners. And so this is where this initial search capital is really required to support your search phase. And most people, when they're looking to raise capital for their search process, are looking for investors who can serve as high quality advisors, people that can done this before, that can give sage advice to someone going through this for the first time. I'll just say at this point that with the company that we've launched, with the accelerator that we've launched, we are a sole source of capital for anyone looking to start their search phase. And so rather than 2 to 6 months of looking for investors and raising capital, we will become the sole source of capital. And so hopefully we can cut 6 months of time out of your search process so that you can move towards acquiring a company that much faster. All right. So in this first stage here, how do you decide what kind of company you want to buy? Well, usually we look at creating industry selection first and foremost. And to do that, we start with some idea generation. Where is your experience? Do you have some experience in certain industries that you think will be valuable towards a company that you might buy? We can look at mega trends like the baby boomer generation. What unique market opportunities are there in servicing an aging baby boomer population, a millennial population that is looking for a different way of working. And you could just be opportunistic, looking at what type of businesses might be in your area where you want to live. So that's really the start of your purchase thesis. The second step is doing some initial screening. How do you do some quick analysis on some of your criteria for a business as you start to look at different industries? Then you go into an information gathering stage. That's where you start to reach out to industry insiders, people that you know within these industries that can teach you about the industries, that can teach you about the growth, that can teach you about the opportunities. You can talk to trade associations that can give you lists of businesses and business owners, as well as other advisory firms, consulting, a number of others that can help you gather information. And then you move towards that ultimate thesis development. As you've been looking at different industries, as you've been gathering information, you take all of that information, you can compare it, and you ultimately can create your criteria for go or no go decisions on the types of businesses within the types of industries that you might look at. And then finally, usually you narrow down to 3 different industries. You may say, why 3? Well, oftentimes searchers go in thinking, well, I've got experience in tech. I'm going to look to buy a tech company. And no tech companies are for sale in the geography that they're looking at, or the tech companies that are for sale are beyond the size of companies that they can afford to purchase. And so usually we look at 3 different industries where you might look at thousands of different companies to find a company you think you might like to run, B, a company you think you can add value with, and C, and most importantly, a company who will sell to you as a new early entrepreneur. So once you've got capital, once you've determined some industries that you want to look at to acquire a company, then you move into stage 2. And that's really the search process. Like I said, this can be up to 2 years. And once you've raised your capital, the search is on, as is the clock. You have a finite amount of money to go forward to pay your salary, again, pay your interns, pay your service providers. And so you need to find a company within a 2-year frame. During this time, this is where you want to reach out to business brokers and to business owners to try and see whether they might be willing to sell to you, whether it's a business that looks attractive to you. And at this point, I'd say also, the interesting part of search and ETA is we're looking at a certain size of business. We're looking at businesses that are on the small to medium size end of the spectrum. And when I say small to medium, those are usually businesses that have $500,000 to $5 million of EBITDA that can range in revenue size. But we'll speak a little bit more about those criteria and in a few moments. What's key to knowing about those criteria or that size of business that you're looking for is that it's a very underrepresented market. Most businesses that are that size don't have a succession plan, don't have professionalization of management, are under the size that most private equity firms are looking to purchase at. And so this is really a sweet spot for young early operators to buy a small business that needs someone to come over and take over succession with. And again, like I said, this is the one of the hardest challenges of this process is once you find a business that fits all of your criteria, that you can be excited and passionate about, potentially running for the next 10 years or the rest of your life, you then have to convince the owner whose legacy it is in building this business to sell to you. So this is definitively a challenging process, but that's where our accelerator and good investors and advisors can support you and can gain the confidence of business owners to help you make that purchase. And during this phase, that's ultimately when we get to the due diligence, negotiation, arranging of financing, and finalizing searchers' equity and the ultimate acquisition. Like I said, this can take upwards of 2 years, although usually with support in an accelerator style model, this is drastically reduced in terms of time. So the businesses you're looking for, we'll go quickly through this. When you're looking to buy a small business, you're looking for a growing market. You might have a growing business in a declining market, and that's going to be very difficult to grow the business over time. You're looking for a business that is in a fragmented industry. There's lots of different competitors. You don't want a big Walmart or some big behemoth potentially being able to take you out of business. Low external risk factors, regulations, tech, these types of things, high barriers to entry. As well, you're looking for a company with history of growth and profitability. You want something that's not a turnaround where you're going to have to go in and try and save a company that's been declining. Good, diverse customer base. Sometimes you get strong middle management. Those are bonuses to find. You're also looking for revenues. As I said, good EBITDA, margins, again, EBITDAs of 500,000 to 5 million, which can equate to revenues of 5 to 30 million, has had pretty stable cash flows. Fantastic if you can find a business that has recurring or repeat customers that you'll take on as a new business owner, and low capex. And when I say low capex, this is pretty important because you're going to be purchasing this business highly leveraged with debt and equity financing. And if this business requires big investments in capex, you're going to burn up your capital pretty quickly. So many people in the search and ETA sector are looking for businesses with much lower capex so they can make the most of their financing. And finally, most importantly, you're looking for an owner that is usually seeking transition out of the business. You want to step in and start a new chapter of the business. That doesn't mean they can't play a consulting role for a year, sometimes longer. It doesn't mean they can't have a small vested equity in the business going forward, but you want to step in as the new owner operator. And so that's really important. Now, let's talk about the search phase and day to day. What does this mean when you're searching for a business to acquire? Well, essentially, you're doing broad outreach. You're managing process that you are continuously trying to refine and gain greater efficiencies on, because there are so many different and so much outbound outreach that you are trying to maintain to find ultimately the business that you want to purchase. You are going to reach out to business brokers, people who help owners sell their businesses. You're going to look at your accountants, your lawyers, people in your network who know people that might be selling a business. And you're also just going to reach out to businesses to business owners who may not be actively selling their business, but haven't been contacted by someone saying, hey, I'm looking to buy a business just like yours. Would you be interested in getting into a conversation with me about this? And through this process, because there is so much outreach, you're usually managing interns, people that can help you source different business owners and source opportunities that you can ultimately do the direct outreach to. Your time quickly becomes about contacting business owners, having those direct conversations, and seeing if you can go towards a conversation about acquisition together while your interns are continuously putting more deal flow in front of you. And during this period, you're also reviewing information, SIMs, confidential information memorandums that businesses are putting out, often through brokers, looking at some of the information on the businesses. There's a whole lot to this process. And so this little charts that I have up on the screen, this is a usual outreach per quarter while you're searching. So sending out emails, having first call with sellers, trying to set up first meetings so that you can ultimately send a letter of intent, which puts you in a direct negotiation with the business. They essentially promise to take the business off the market and just be in conversation with you to ultimately getting towards an acquisition. And it's when you sign an LOI that the cavalry starts coming. Your accountants, your lawyers, and the people you're going to spend some money on to ultimately help you go through the due diligence and acquisition process. And so you don't want to sign an LOI until you're pretty sure that this is a business that you'd like to run and an owner who is truly intent on selling. Some financing, just to understand, when you find a business that you like to acquire, financing your deal usually looks something like this in Canada. These numbers are flexible, but essentially you're using a combination of debt from banks. In Canada, we can do 50, sometimes up to 75% debt from banks, depending on how highly leveraged you want to be with bank debt. Usually we are bringing in 25% on a seller's note, meaning that the seller of the business stays invested in the business, usually a period of 5 years. And that's important so that a business owner isn't just selling you a lemon and running away with your cash. You want them to have vested interest in the transition and success of the business going forward. And so you usually withhold some of the payment with a seller's note that you pay interest on over a 5-year period. And then the rest being the equity that your investors come in to support the purchase with. We structure these deals, and Search and ETA usually structures these deals so that you have a meaningful piece of equity, which I'll speak to in a moment. And over time, that equity, you have the opportunity to grow it as you buy out your investors, and many other options that can come along with this. So your equity. You have some investors who ultimately buy a company for you. What does that mean in terms of ownership? Well, typical traditional search funds will vest anywhere from 15 to 30% common equity to the new early operator. And that usually comes in 3 tranches. When you actually acquire a business, you get a third of your equity. So if we say that you're going to get 25% equity ownership in this company, 8.33% comes on the day you buy the company. The second tranche usually comes over a 4 to 5 year vesting period, meaning you're paying off your debt to bankers and to the business owner, the seller, that you haven't sunk the company, that you're essentially meeting the debt obligations of your investors and debtors. And then usually tranche 3 comes by achieving other performance benchmarks, usually around year 7 or 8, but every deal is different. And so you can earn upwards of, depending on the investors, 15 to 30% equity in the company, which usually translates to a lot of great wealth performance, as I'll speak to in a second. So we've gone through stage 1, we've raised capital, we've raised capital for our search process. Stage 2, we've spent upwards of 2 years searching for and ultimately acquiring a business. Then we step into stage 3. That's the operation of the business. That's when the really hard work begins. But all of that 2-year phase, or however long it took you to acquire a company, is like an MBA on steroids and preparing you to manage your partners, your lawyers, your accountants, and understanding the business through the due diligence, that by the time you acquire the business, you will know this business very well, and you will be ready to step into a CEO role. So this is where you have to manage a transition process. Are the employees going to go running when you step in as the new early operator? How do you work with your stakeholders, your suppliers and partners? Transition processes can be challenging, but they can also be an incredible opportunity for new chapter and new growth in these businesses. You will usually establish a board of directors with some of your investors taking on roles on that board. Your investors clearly have an interest in seeing your success, and so they want to advise you. They've invested in you and the businesses you've acquired, not just because they see an income generating opportunity, which search funds have proven to be a tremendous income opportunity, but more so because the investors in search funds usually are high net worth individuals, and they want to use their skills and expertise in growing businesses and nurture that in a younger version of themselves. And so usually they'll take on board roles. And usually within the first 3 to 6 months is do no harm in the business, which means don't make any big decisions. You need to learn this business, you need to learn the relationships and step into an early operator's role where ultimately, before you make big decisions, you're quite sure about how this business operates and who the stakeholders are. And then you move into business operation. Growing growth, looking for operating efficiencies, using leverage, organically growing the business, potentially acquiring other businesses as bolt-ons or roll-ups. There's a lot of different ways, obviously, to grow a business that you acquire. And once we go through stage 3, then we go to the exit stage. I'll say before I say anything about this, that with the Canada Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Accelerator, we're not looking for exits. We're not forcing our searchers to buy a business and say, within 7 years, we want you to sell this business. We're going to be a holdco. We are a holdco, and we're looking for long-term growth of the businesses that we acquire. And so the traditional exits that search fund investors have looked for in the past will not be a requirement of our fund and our accelerator. So over the long term, we're looking for growth, and usually when you grow in a business, acquisition opportunities, strategic buyers come up, and so at this point, your investors, their debts should be repaid. Your bank and preferred interest to your investors will have been paid. Investors may want to sell their equity for other opportunities back to the business owner. And so lots of different transition opportunities or change in ownership opportunities may come up throughout this period. As I said, strategic acquirers come searching themselves. And as has been the case of one of my business partners, early searchers, their business was sold, and they became the CEO of the public company that purchased them. So there's lots of different outcomes that can be had throughout this process. So I know that's a lot in looking at the 4 stages of the search phase. So why should any of this interest you? Well, as I mentioned earlier, search fund returns are pretty good. So the average equity value for an entrepreneur, a searcher, who bought a business and is still operating a business, and this is coming from the Stanford Search Study, which is done every other year. I'll put links up to the resources for some of these studies. The average searcher who's still operating the business is 5.63 million in equity, and that's US dollars. For those who have exited, they usually return a $6.52 million equity stake. That's equivalent to like 1.25 million in equity earned per year in these small businesses that they've acquired and grown. And this is on average. This is just the average. This includes people who didn't grow value in the businesses. And investor returns in the search fund sector have been fantastic. It's actually closer to 34% IRR right now. So it's been a fantastic asset class to make investments as an investor, and for young entrepreneurs to acquire businesses that have already jumped the venture gap. They've already proven their viability. They already have cash flows, and so they're really an aspirational way to grow your leadership career and your business career. Why else should this interest you? Well, search funds in North America, they've been growing. So there've been 5,000 search funds ever launched, traditional search funds launched since 1984, since the idea of search funds was really created. 50% of those have been in the last 4 years, meaning people are really catching on to this asset class and to this entrepreneurial opportunity, and it's really starting to grow fast. As you can see from this visual, the ecosystem in Canada is pretty nascent. There's been only 14 searchers in the last 2 years. It might be about double of that in terms of self-funded searchers, which is a bit of a different model. But really, we're just in the infancy, and so there's not a lot of competition in this space right now. There are search fund investors that are growing in Canada. Most of them are investing in searchers in the United States. We're aiming to change that. There are currently no entrepreneurship through acquisition programs being taught at business schools across Canada, whereas there's about a dozen at Ivy League business schools in the US. We seek to change that over the long term. But what this all states to is we're at the start of the search ecosystem in Canada, and there's a lot of opportunity for searchers that are willing to take this. As well, there's a huge opportunity in the macro marketplace. I talked about baby boomer generation. We've got a giant market failure happening here. 98% of Canada's economy and GDP is run by small businesses. The vast majority of those are run by baby boomers, who the vast majority wish to or intend to exit their business in the next 5 to 7 years. And the vast majority of them, 2/3 of those baby boomer business owners, do not have a succession plan. And so what this means is, a huge opportunity for those young searchers who are saying, I see a great succession in the businesses that essentially make up our economy. I would like to buy one of those businesses. I know these searchers are looking for an exit. They don't have a plan. I can be their plan. And I say this is a market failure because 1/3 of transitions fail, which means there's tremendous value lost in our economy. It's estimated that 700,000 small, medium enterprises are at risk to closure in the next few years due to ownership exits, because there's not succession planning, because there isn't an heir apparent in the business or in the family to pass this on, which all speaks to a great opportunity for young searchers looking at this model. So let me tell you a little bit. I'm going to speak for a few more minutes here, and then I want to open it up to conversation and questions with those who are here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the fund and the accelerator that my partner and I have put together, called CETA, or the Canada ETA Accelerator. Because there are no business programs teaching this, business schools teaching ETA yet, we aim to train, mentor, and finance entrepreneurial leaders looking to acquire Canadian SMEs. And we're looking to support those entrepreneurs in taking those companies to their utmost potential in value creation, meaning traditional metrics of revenue, profit, but as well societal benefit. I'll speak to that more in a second. It's a fund and an accelerator ecosystem. So our fund, we're looking to make $40 million in business acquisitions per year, beginning next year in 2023. We hope to grow that number significantly as we grow our accelerator ecosystem and support services. Ultimately, we're connecting demand for ownership succession with the supply of exceptional talent, young searchers, good capital, and a network of advisors and supporters to help them ensure that they grow those businesses well. Like I said before, we're permanent capital. We do not expect our searchers to bring any equity to the table. Their equity is fully sweat equity. Like I said, this is a hard journey. It's not for the faint of heart. We will capitalize you. And we are going to capitalize you not looking for any short-term exits or decision making. We're not going to gut the companies. We're not going to use these to blow up our balance sheets for a private equity type deal. We're looking for long-term growth. And maybe most importantly, we have a mission lock on social impact. So our impact thesis is really this. I've spent my career in social impact and innovation. New ventures are going to be critical to the society, the economy we need to create for the sustainability of our civilization. We are looking beyond new venture creation, obviously, and we're looking to use the search fund vehicle and the ETA ecosystem as an even bigger lever for impact. As the vast majority of our economy is transitioning over to the next generation of entrepreneurs and business owners, this is the time to inject these companies with the young talent, the right capital, and the DNA for social impact. Most small, medium enterprises don't have a strong focus on their social purpose and social impact, and we aim to ultimately drive that DNA into the businesses we acquire and set up metrics for success for the young entrepreneurs, so that they're not just looking at business viability and profitability, but as well the ultimate social good that they are doing with the platform of a company we purchase for them. So, as I spoke to, we're going to try and address the market failure, this Canadian succession crisis. We don't want to lose all this great economic value and the legacy of these entrepreneurs who have created great small businesses. We want to transition to a purpose-driven economy, meaning we're going to acquire these Canadian small businesses and evolve them to become profit for purpose companies. What does that mean? Well, purpose, when a business defines its reason for being in social terms and places at the core of its strategic decision-making processes, that ultimately becomes the engine that powers the company and drives the business forward. And between my business partner and I, this isn't about purpose. This isn't about impact. This isn't about CSR. Doing this, using purpose as the core business driver is just good business. And we have both done very well by doing good. So this is for us just strategic business making with a greater emphasis of social purpose at the core of why we're buying this company and how we're going to support you to impact the world in a positive way. JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Our impact thesis in the US, the vast majority of searchers have been white, male, privileged, come from investment banking, private equity, management consulting. There's a lot of good things that we're going to take from the models that have come out of the US, and definitively as we recreate this model in Canada, we are going to look to level the playing field of capital. So regardless of background, you have the opportunity to become a social entrepreneur leader in your space. And conscious leadership, a big support and value proposition of the accelerator that we're creating is to nurture holistic, conscious leaders in taking small businesses forward and nurturing that themselves in their stakeholders, in their employees, in their communities going forward. That's in line with the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and more recently, the Inner Development Goals. How do we become the change that we want to see in the world? More on that I can share for those interested as they reach out. How does this all work? Last slides here. Well, essentially, our accelerator is designed to train and fund your ETA and search journey. We want to reduce the amount of squandered time. My business partner has purchased over 15 companies. We've got a great depth of experience in how to do this well. We want to cut that time down in the search journey from 2 years to ultimately a year. And we ultimately want to improve the success rate for searchers looking to acquire companies. We are going to open applications to our first ETA and Searcher Bootcamp early in the new year. We have dates are to be determined, but we are looking to run this either in the second or third week of August of 2023. So those interested, I'll put up our website and you can sign up for updates and newsletters as we finalize these details. This is a cohort-based model. We are going to, in our first year, aim to invest in 4 to 6 searchers. That number might seem small, but ultimately, this is similar to Navy SEAL training. You know, Navy SEALs, they're looking at a lot of people and they whittle it down to a few people that they can invest ultimately millions of dollars into. And we're going to do the same, not just in your career development, but ultimately in the acquisitions of companies for you to buy. So we're looking for a few good folks that we can start this process with. Pardon the spelling mistake on this slide, but we are also going to be hiring 30 to 40 interns per year. And so for those of you that want to dip your toe in the search ETA community and want to have a part-time internship supporting some of these searchers and looking at businesses they can acquire, looking at lists, supporting them to find companies, maybe those are in BComs, maybe those are MBAs, maybe those are in career transition who before taking the plunge into search want to get a better understanding of the process. We're going to be looking for folks in that field as well. And so our criteria, real quick here, we're looking for entrepreneurs ready to take on massive responsibility, lead a team, and create a positive company culture and platform that we purchase for you. 100% focus, no part-timers here. You burn the ships behind you. This is a big 10-year commitment, as I said, minimum. Long-term growth, as I mentioned, no exit requirement. Every acquisition is going to become a platform for a social purpose journey. No searcher finance is required. Required is application and attendance at our ETA bootcamp or searcher bootcamp. You can be anywhere in Canada, but this is limited to Canada. I mentioned the size. That says 3 million. It should say 500,000 to 5 million. EBITDA for companies we look to acquire. We don't care what industry. It can be any industry. All of those companies are a platform for social purpose. And is this right for you? Well, do you want to have an entrepreneurial path running your own company? Do you have belief in your own leadership ability and more so your learning journey? Do you have perseverance and grit? Can you handle rejections? Can you handle the highs and the lows together? Can you build relationships and networks? Do you have an attention to detail? Are you flexible in a very chaotic process? Is your significant partner on the same page as you? Are they willing to join this journey with you? So for those of you that are interested in learning more about this, go sharpen your chops on search. Go look at the Stanford search studies. You can find these online. There's good paper on research on the nature of work-life integration as a search fund CEO, how to prepare for a search fund during your MBA for those of you that are MBAs. A couple of good books, the Harvard Business Review Guide to Buying a Small Business, Search Funds and Entrepreneurial Acquisitions by Jan Simon. There's a lot of great search podcasts to learn more about this. So I am going to leave this slide up. Please take a look at our website, www.ceta.ca at the bottom there. Sign up for our newsletter so you can be kept up to date on all of our progressions. We are moving fast, but as I said, August will be the start of our first year and cohort. You can reach out to me, Cordell Jacks at ceta.ca. And with that, I appreciate that I've fire hosed you with a lot of information here, but wanted to give you a brief overview. I want to open it up to questions now. I'll stop my share. And again, thank you to our hosts here.
Thank you so much, Cordell, for your presentation. Like, I feel inspired, and I'm pretty sure anyone here that has the skill, the brain, the resilience, but no idea or no funds to start a business, I think this is a great opportunity coming up here in Canada, led by Cordell. So thank you so much for taking the time today. So we have 2 questions. I'm going to start with the first question from Matt. How much direction and coaching is given from the ETA during the search period? I think it's a two-side question. So are entrepreneurs fully on their own to find prospective inquiries, or is there any framework through ETA? What is typically followed?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for that question. So this is the search process is where it's most hands-on in terms of the value proposition of our accelerator. This is if you haven't done an acquisition before, there's a lot to learn. And I mean, this full searcher cycle is a big learning cycle. So we give a lot of direction and supporting you in this search process, and how to manage your interns, and how to speak with business owners, and how to negotiate the process, and how to learn due diligence, which is, challenging. But let me just say, I'm not a finance guy, I'm not an accounting guy, I'm not a modeling guy. I'm learning fast how to do this, and it doesn't take a certain person with private equity, management consulting, PE backgrounds, or investment banking backgrounds. All of this can be learned. And although search is only, new in the last 30 years, search and ETA, the vast majority of business acquisitions have not been made around the search structure. And so people of all walks of life can learn this stuff. It's, are you willing to learn? And we will put all the resources at your disposal to ensure you get a good acquisition. But that ultimately, as I said, you are learning everything you need to learn in the due diligence, negotiation, acquisition, service provider management process, all of that period, so that when you step into that CEO role, you aren't super dependent on us. You're going to have investors and advisors in us to support you in the growth of your company, but you're also going to be primed to take on a CEO role. And so, lots of support, and that's ultimately our value proposition. Thanks for that question. Great question, Matt.
Thanks. I hope, Matt, you got your answer. And then the second question is, what growth rate are you looking at? I guess maybe is it when purchasing a business, when looking at purchasing a business, is there a specific growth rate that the candidate should be looking at?
Yeah, no, there's not a defined growth rate. Let me answer that tongue in cheek, first of all, which is, as much growth rate, what growth rate do you want as a CEO owner? You probably would want as great a rate of growth as possible. Now, that being said, we're looking to make a profit. We're not looking to make a killing. We're happy to make great profits, but not at the expense of our social impact mission. And so that means, are we willing to take a 25% rather than 33% IRR if it means that we can positively impact the world through meaningful metrics and impact? Definitively. But there's no predefined rate. We're going to help you grow your business and your platform to its ultimate value creation. Again, not just in financial, but ultimate impact in all of the relations that you touch. So I'm sure there's follow-up questions on that, but there's no predetermined, you must hit this rate. I will say though, the predetermined rates are, you're going to have to pay off your debt. We're going to buy these businesses leveraged with bank debt. That is first primary lender. Secondary is the seller's note. You're going to have to pay back that seller for usually the 25% equity they hold in the company for the 5-year period. And 3, you're going to have to pay an interest rate to your equity investors, a preferred interest rate. And that's just usually how this deal structure goes. That's the bare minimum of success. And that's just the bare minimum of ensuring that you can go forward with this. Once you've done that though, all equity and all profits that you make in the business, and that's what's so beautiful about this model, you start to reap massive rewards. So definitively the entrepreneurial leap that many people are making here is the first 5 years, you're probably not hitting those. On paper, you might be hitting 1.25 million in equity, but only after 7 years. You're probably living somewhat modestly for the first 5 years until your debts are paid off, and then real growth happens. And that's the beauty of this model. Great question, Manfred. Thank you.
Perfect. There's still time to ask a question, but I do have a question. Cordell, when you look at the market, the business selling market here in Canada, do you feel like there is a higher demand or a higher offer? Like, is there a great opportunity for people to tap into that market here in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And this is what we are so excited about with our fund and with this accelerator. The US has 30 years on us of growing this ecosystem. They've got academic programs. They're teaching bright young Ivy League kids to do this. They've got search fund investors. They've got accelerator models. They've got all different types of things. This doesn't exist in Canada. There are so few people who are doing this, and there's so little competition. This will come definitively as we grow this market. For those who are coming in early, We have advisors on our board that run large public, private companies, and we brought them on as advisors because one, they have M&A experience, they can support our searchers. Two, because they have deal flow coming through their desk that they're like, these are great companies, but they're too small for our strategic acquisitions. We should find young people that want to take these over because they're for sale. So the market opportunity is tremendous. Let alone, I truly believe that we're not looking for searchers who just want to go and make a killing, like go private equity or go find some other search investor. We're looking for people that want to take this opportunity of the great business succession here and do something meaningful with their life, that have a greater purpose than just money in their pockets. So I just want to reiterate that this is a bigger opportunity from a meaning perspective than a pure profit play. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer. I have another question here. Are there personal guarantees? As you pay off the debt, do you increase your equity?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
So are there any personal guarantees? I know you've mentioned that you don't need any money to come into the program, but someone is asking if there's any personal guarantees to be able to pay off the debt, or how do you increase your equity as well?
Yeah, so oftentimes there will be personal guarantees with the bank debt in purchasing this, and that's just par for the course for financing. So that's why I said, this is entrepreneurial. It's an alternative entrepreneurial career path, but like any entrepreneurial career path, there is risk involved with this. I just spent the week. I was at the Harvard ETA conference in Boston last Sunday, and I spent the week in Tampa with Pursuance Capital, a large 8-year-old search fund investor, to learn from them as well. The numbers are really good here. The numbers are, for those that make it through the 2-year search phase, or hopefully a lot less with us, they buy companies, they've dedicated themselves, they've proven themselves, they've worked their muscle memory to get to the place that they're gonna take a good company and make it great. For those that drop out the process, well, that's probably, their risk is that they haven't put up a personal guarantee. They didn't end up buying a business. They may have lost out on 18 months of career growth going to, a big 4 accounting firm or going somewhere else. But that first phase, we're betting on you. We're going to finance a meager salary. We're going to finance all of the costs of your search process. This is a tremendous opportunity. It's when you get to actually acquiring a company that you put some skin in the game around those personal interests. And sorry, you had a second part of that question, Corinne.
Yeah, I think there's another question, but it's still in the same spec. Someone is asking, what do you think? Like, can you comment on what should be expected as we enter into a period of increasing inflation and higher interest rates, and what impact that may have on startups in terms of debt and equity, given the fact that I think you mentioned 50% of funding is usually through debt. So I think there's a few questions around that.
Super good question. This question was asked all week last week in every panel and session that I was in. Rising interest rates, inflation, recession potential, all of those things are real in our environment right now. As an entrepreneur, that makes things scarier. As someone purchasing a business, I think that is actually a better opportunity. A lot of people who were looking to sell a business and we're looking for higher multiples, and I'll just say businesses in this sector, search, small medium enterprises, 500,000 to 5 million EBITDA, usually go for multiples of 3 to 6 times EBITDA. Okay, 3 to 6 times EBITDA. Those business owners that were looking for a very high multiple, or are starting to get cold feet about the future of our economy as well, I think it's a tremendous buying opportunity. And that's not to take advantage of boomers who have created beautiful small businesses and legacy. Like, this is about creating partnerships and respect and reverence in all relationships and all stakeholders here. So don't mishear my words here, but it does provide an opportunity for people who are saying, now's the time for me to get out. I may not be ready to weather the next economic cycle, make the investments in my business that might need to happen during this next cycle. I think it's time to get out and, hey, here's a young, ambitious entrepreneur with a social purpose bent. My swan song, my last act as a business owner is to turn my business over to someone with capital, with support, with an ecosystem and network behind them, as well as a social impact mission. I think it's the perfect time to be a business buyer, quite honestly.
Thank you, Cordell, for your answer. I hope this answered your question. There's no more questions, and I think we're going to wrap up for today. But again, thank you for being here with us. I think this is a great opportunity for entrepreneurs or will-be entrepreneurs here in Canada, given the fact that you are financing everything, even the salary. I think that's a great resource. And oh, I have one more. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So what will be the action plan for today as first step to have an acquisition? Like if there's one thing that someone can do today to step into that opportunity, what would that be?
Yeah, I just punched it into the chat there. Go to www.ceta.ca. At the bottom of the page is a sign up to be kept abreast of all of our plans and updates. You can visit me, you can follow me on LinkedIn, and you can follow the CETA page, Canada Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Accelerator. I know it's a mouthful. We may rebrand before this is done, but it's truly to the ethos of what we're building here. So take a look at either of those. You can, if you go to either of those, you can be in contact with me and get ready for the boot camp that we're going to launch this summer here in BC. Anyone from across Canada. And I will say this, although we're finalizing what the costs of this boot camp are, like I said, we're looking to make this as equitable as possible. And so there will be fellowships based on need and participant requirement to ensure that we can get anyone who is ready for this journey to be open and giving them the opportunity to acquire, to lead, and to be a social impact leader that we need in our economy and society going forward. Thanks. Great question.
Thank you so much. So yes, we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you again for joining us today. We have our webinars lined up. So if you have any questions, feel free to check out the website, check out the resource here in the chat as well. Cordell is a very approachable person. If you have any question, you can reach out to him directly on LinkedIn, check out the website. And yes, we're going to wrap up for today. Have a great rest of the afternoon. And yeah, see you next time.